Welcome back to So I Was Told, where we dismantle ideologies, untangle emotions, and reimagine what it means to be human in a world obsessed with power. Today's episode is called Fascism 101. Yes, today we are talking about fascism. Maybe you've heard someone call a politician a fascist and thought, all right, that's a little bit dramatic, or maybe you've seen it in comment sections like it's just the insult of the month. But fascism isn't just an edgy label. It's a historical force that's killed millions, and it doesn't just show up overnight. It shows up through policy, through language, through silence. So let's break all of this down. What fascism is, where it came from, and what it looks like today. And most importantly, what we can do about it. Let's get into it. So what is fascism nowadays? Has it changed? Does it look any different? Well, historian Robert Paxton defines fascism as, quote, a form of political behavior marked by obsessive preoccupation with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood, and by compensatory cults of unity, energy, and purity. Sounds abstract. What the hell does all of that mean? Let's make it plain. To understand this better, it essentially means fascism thrives on fear. It scapegoats. It demands loyalty. It punishes dissent. It offers a fantasy that we can be restored to greatness by purging the other. Now, does any of that sound familiar to you? If so, you might be experiencing the rise of fascism. Let's go back to historian Robert Paxton. He's got these 5 stages in which, when understood, helps us identify the rise of fascism. Number 1, creating a myth of national decline. These political figureheads will often talk about how the greatness of the nation is rapidly declining or already far gone. Make America great again. Number 2, blaming internal enemies. These leaders will often blame people within the country as being responsible for this national decline, whether it's past political leaders, past presidents, a certain people group within the nation, you name it. The blame always gets shifted to these people who are identified as enemies. Number 3, I think this is very telling of our times when it comes to the male loneliness epidemic. Number 3 is glorifying tradition and masculinity. What is this idea of make America great again other than trying to install some weird mid-century culture in America where classic masculinity is the norm again, and these so-called great American traditions are supposed to be what make us happy? No, they won't do that, primarily because a lot of our issues can be traced back to this glorification of the patriarchy. Number 4 is disdaining democratic norms. That is to essentially identify anything democratic as antithetical to human flourishing or the vessel in which poisonous ideologies are ushered into the country. You start to hear these random ideas about who can vote, who should vote, whose vote should count, how votes should count, the necessity of classical democratic practices. And number 5, the last stage, is using violence to reclaim purity. That is, any means necessary to enforce policies that are supposed to make such a nation great. If you can check off 3 or more of these in your daily news cycle, then that's a red flag. And no, it doesn't need swastikas to count. There doesn't need to be a symbol. There doesn't need to be blatant hand gestures, because that isn't what determines who is or isn't a fascist. It's so much more than that. So ask yourself, have you ever seen people downplay violence against marginalized folks? Have you ever heard any language from political leaders or people you know saying something along the lines of taking our country back? You see, fascism doesn't need to be loud and obvious or in the form of marching down the streets. It can slither right into society. Now, it's no surprise that in this episode, I'm primarily going to be using America as the example for identifying fascism. It's here, it's prevalent, it's spreading. In June, President Trump deployed the National Guard to suppress peaceful protests in LA, a city in which I have incredibly close proximity to. These peaceful protests have indeed been mostly led by immigration and housing rights activists. The Guardian labeled it, quote, a dangerous new era. The Daily Beast didn't hold back, writing an article titled, Fascism is in Bloom. Meanwhile, Trump openly referred to the immigrants as, quote, poisoning the blood of our country. That's not just offensive, that's textbook fascist rhetoric, echoing Nazi ideology. Add in idiots like Ron DeSantis banning books and targeting LGBTQ students with policy, and you've got fascism wrapped in legislation. This isn't just hypothetical anymore, friends. Sad to say that Project 2025, which is a real conservative roadmap that concentrates executive power and guts independent civil agencies, has already been successful in large parts of our government. It's fascism in khakis and policy-based purity. So ask yourself, who benefits from the silencing of teachers? Who profits from militarized borders? Who gains when people are too afraid to speak? This isn't about purity. This isn't about greatness. This is about the rich getting richer, the powerful becoming more powerful. It's disgusting. Turkish writer Temel Kuran coined the term cloud fascism, an invisible digital authoritarianism, not necessarily a loud dictator, but algorithms that shadow ban dissent, tech companies that quietly partner with law enforcement, biometric borders, and predictive policing software. In the US alone, ICE has used DMV photos and social media to track immigrants without consent. Facial recognition is normalized in airports, concerts, even schools. It's fascism with a clean UI. You see, globally, it echoes. Italy's Giorgia Meloni has ties to Mussolini's legacy. Hungary's Viktor Orban runs a Christian nationalist regime. The UK has an explicitly fascist party gaining members. And we've all heard of China and their social credit system that seems straight out of Orwell. So ask yourself, what does resistance look like when repression is invisible? How do you fight the cloud? To do this, we have to first understand the psychology of fascism. You see, fascism doesn't just conquer countries, it colonizes the mind. Become familiar with that phrase, colonization of the mind. You see, in the Third Reich of dreams, German citizens began dreaming of censorship. They feared even in their subconscious. That's how deep the repression went. Umberto Eco wrote about Your Fascism, written You Are Fascism, which lists traits like the fear of difference, cult of tradition, obsession with enemies, and the use of newspeak, which, if you're familiar with 1984 by Orwell, is essentially language that shrinks thought. In other words, there is no ability to comprehend what you are reading or to think critically. No more discourse without assuming it's some form of personal attack. You see, fascism thrives on nostalgia. It thrives on suffering as a virtue, and it thrives so obviously on hypermasculinity. It wants to erase queerness. It wants to erase softness. It wants to erase all forms of deviation. It essentially makes you afraid to feel, let alone speak. So ask yourself, have I ever been afraid to post the truth, to speak up at work? That fear isn't just personal, it's cultural. So, what does resistance look like? Well, let's take a look at our own personal history and go back to 1943. You see, during World War II, the White Rose movement, which was just a handful of students printed anti-Nazi leaflets knowing they'd be executed. That's what it looked like in 1943. Today, it looks like librarians refusing to pull books, city officials blocking police militarization budgets, teachers telling banned histories anyway. Rick Steves says the fight starts at home. Protect public education, defend journalism, and engage globally. Back to what we learned about the cloud of fascism. The Quran tells us to build a, quote, cloud of resistance, interconnected but not isolated. So, that means that your Instagram post still matters. Your mutual aid group still matters. But don't just stop there. Ask yourself, what's my version of the white rose? What can I do right now with the tools that I already have? Because I'll tell you one thing for sure. Not doing anything is only helping the fascist agenda. You don't have to do this alone. Find people online. If you've got people in real life that are talking about this, get into those conversations. If not, start those conversations. Use the examples in this episode. It isn't hard to figure out, folks. If this made you uncomfortable, then that's a good thing. Discomfort is a signal, so lean into it. Question what you've accepted as normal. Fascism thrives in your silence, but resistance lives in community. Vote local, defend your libraries, speak the truth even when your voice shakes, support whistleblowers, share information, talk to your people. Stay awake, stay grounded, and never underestimate the power of naming the thing out loud.